Yes, that's right, that's right. Did you want to stay? Stay at home. We can't. Yeah. So a bit tight. Grace has actually got in-person clients tomorrow, which she started very early.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Look at you all. What a wonderful gathering. What an amazing group of people here today to celebrate the life of Mr. Ian Moffatt. My name is Lou Saunders, and it's my privilege to be able to conduct the service on behalf of the family. What a time of year to come together to celebrate someone's life, but also remember Ian, remember those good times, remember those battling times, remember those times where life was just life, and probably a good way to start off the year, but we certainly know that Ian is now at peace. The struggles of life are over for him, and he is quietly resting through. So I would like to again thank you all on behalf of the family for coming here today, to giving up your busy schedules, whatever that may look like. I know some of you have travelled quite a ways, and we are also joined by some folk on live stream as well. And it's just a wonderful way in this day of technology to be able to be here when you can't physically be here. Certainly days like today are not easy, but I certainly feel they are necessary, and it was good to sit down with Esther and Heather the other day and talk a little bit about Ian's life and perhaps how he would like today celebrated. Perhaps wasn't expecting so many people, but I'm sure he'd be quietly chuffed at the amount of people and the range of people that have joined us here today. And this is going to be a day of memories. It's so good that you had been able to have this beautiful memorial booklet as you came in, and see some of those wonderful thoughts that have been shared within that booklet. And I'm sure as many people as possible will be able to head up to Whalers afterwards for some light refreshments as per the back of your invitation here today. You are certainly welcome to join the family for that time together. I was about to remind everyone about their telephones, but thank you for that little prompt over on my right. It's always good to have a little reminder, but please, if you wouldn't mind just checking your mobiles for me, just to make sure they're off, but if they do need to be on silent, that would be appreciated. So where does one begin at a service like this? How does one remember Ian? What is your connection? Has it been a long-term relationship? Has it been over just a short period? Has it been one of those relationships where life went on and you lost contact for a while, but the sad news of his passing's brought you here today? I continue to marvel at the connections we have across our lives, how people are connected and what our connections are, and certainly across the room here today I'm sure there'll be some wonderful connections and some wonderful times of catching up as we head into 2023. See what this year can bring us, shall we? Esther, would you like to come up now and share us a little bit about Ian's life? And thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you all so much for coming today to help Ian's family and his many friends celebrate the life of our darling Ian. For the last 6 months, I've been musing on what to say on this day, wondering how on earth I could do justice to the extraordinary wonderfulness of our Ian. He always said there was nothing special about him. He was just an ordinary, hard-working guy, not particularly clever, dodging along and doing the best he could for his family. And he would have been genuinely shocked at the number of people here today and truly humbled at the outpouring of love and support for our family at this time. To those of you who have heard the story of how Ian and I met, apologies, but I love this story, so I'm going to tell it again. I met Ian in 1984, when I was 23 and he was still just 22. It was a time in my life when I was still figuring out who I was. I think Ian had a stronger idea of self than I did, having settled already into his career as a lawyer. We were introduced by our good friend Julie, who I suspect had no idea that sparks would fly between her just off the plane from university overseas friend Esther and her quiet law school friend living as a country lawyer in Port Lincoln, Ian. We met while I was unemployed and looking for work, and Ian was briefly back in his hometown of Adelaide for a trial. He went back to Lincoln, and I got a job in Melbourne. And every few weeks we'd have a date. These involved long trips in his mother's car for Ian and expensive plane flights for me. And after 6 months, I suggested to Ian, over the phone mind you, that we should either break up or get married. There was utter silence on the other end of the line. "Can I think about it and call you back?" he said quietly. Fair cop. I don't remember how long it was before Ian called me back, but his answer was definitive, if somewhat confusing. "Yes," he said. "Yes," I said. "Which? Break up or get married?" He laughed. Get married, of course. Breaking up was never an option. So the next decision was where to live, and in typical Ian and Esther fashion, we decided the only equitable way to proceed was that we both quit our existing jobs and moved back to Adelaide. We bought a flat in Glenelg and lived there happily, till we moved to Melbourne for my work in 1987. Ian found the shift to the big smoke hard at first, because it had never occurred to him he might live anywhere other than South Australia. But Ian agreed Melbourne was where I needed to be for my career, so he got on with the job of loving where you live. We spent 6 months apart in 1988 when I worked in New York for a time, but at the end of that separation we were so pleased to be back together that Heather came along in 1989. Ian changed to working part-time to care for her, and then in 1992 Gilbert joined our little family. Ian was a natural dad. Nappies, baths, feeding, building towers of blocks only to have them knocked down, doing puzzles, reading books, singing songs, watching play school, the whole deal. He loved it all. And eventually his part-time work wouldn't stay in his box, so Ian quit and looked after the children full-time. Heather and Gilbert were obviously a snap to take care of because we decided to have a third child, and Alistair arrived in 1996. And even then, Ian was clearly not at full capacity because we bought a 72-acre hobby farm. Ian loved going to the farm and planting olive trees, feeding hay to and mustering our cattle, messing about with stockyards and fences, building a veggie garden, fencing off and replanting our old growth gully, climbing to the top of the hill as a family to look out over Western Port Bay and watching the weather rolling in from the west. Then in 1988, my job became just too much, so I too stopped working, and we spent 6 months trying to figure out what to do next. Ian says we started his small suburban legal practice because we wanted to work together, and we did want to work together. And we lacked the imagination to come up with anything more original. We juggled daycare, school pickups and drop-offs, meal prep, visiting the farm, visiting our parents, going to school plays and music performances, watching countless netball games, soccer games, basketball games and football games. Those years were full and challenging and difficult and rewarding, and Ian loved it all. He never aspired to being important or admired. He wanted to be surrounded by his friends, his brothers, his parents, his kids, me. Family was ever important. And for him, it was a concept roomy enough to include not just his family, but my family as well. Visits to my parents in New Zealand while they were alive, and my sister Chrissy and her family in Adelaide, were always given top priority and were more important to him than social status, money, or the car he drove. He was interested in politics, history, geography, art, theatre, architecture, classical music. He read widely, almost entirely non-fiction, and history books big enough to be used as doorstops. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he decided it was finally time to read Winston Churchill's 4-volume history of the Duke of Marlborough. He made it through the first 2 volumes. He wasn't a religious person, but he was a philosophical thinker. And over the course of his life, he read extensively and pondered deeply on the nature of our human condition. He concluded that the universe was harsh and cold, and our place in it is determined by the luck of our birth and the luck of our DNA. He believed that all we have, is each other, and therefore it matters a very great deal how we treat each other. Respect and kindness were his cornerstones, and were part of being good and doing good. He firmly believed in the importance of personal liberty and the right of everyone to make choices for themselves. But equally important to his worldview was the social contract, our obligation to ensure that our choices don't harm others, and the importance of making the world as better place as we can according to our talents and our ability to contribute. The thing he liked most about his legal practice was meeting and working with a diverse range of people, learning about their families and lives, their histories, their businesses, how they'd come to be who they were. He helped them navigate their problems, plan for their futures, create new enterprises, manage their risks, and provide for their families. His clients liked and trusted him. He spent 17 years in the Rotary Club of Sandringham and a similar period of time on the board of St Leonard's College. The tributes I have received from the friends and associates he had in both organisations have praised both his contribution to their work, but also the personal qualities that defined him. The words they use include kind, wise, special, smile, laugh, clever, gentle, and trusted. Ian was playful, and he was fond of what we called science experiments. Whether it was figuring out which South Australian wine region he liked best, by visiting them all and sampling the wines, of course, or which was the most interesting route to use when driving to Canberra. He loved driving, and he loved a road trip, observing the different landscapes of this wide brown land as we drove through them, figuring out which crops were growing along the way, and talking about the influence of watercourses and hills on the siting of towns and roads. He won the geography prize in high school. Every road trip was a chance for us to mooch along together, enjoy the passing scenery, and talk about anything and everything, but especially our children. There are many things that Ian was not. He was not pompous or self-aggrandising. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of cars, but he had no interest in driving a fancy one. He understood the intricacies of electric circuits and fences, but he could not hammer a nail straight. He could give advice on the tax system and corporate law, but he struggled to change a tap washer. He could reverse a trailer with pinpoint precision, but he had 2 left feet. He liked supporting local business people and never negotiated with them on price. He believed it was really important to let everyone make a living and to always leave some money on the table for the other guy. He was optimistic and a little naive, and he navigated the world with a sense of joy and his enormous good luck to have been born at the time in history that he was, in the place that he was, and into the family that he was. He got his unpretentiousness from his grandma Hazel, his love of books and poetry from Grandpa Alec, his kindness and gentleness and his recipe for tuna mornay from his mother Pauline, his love of a well-cooked steak and a robust glass of red wine from his father Jim, and his affinity for our beautiful coast from knocking about Henley Beach with his brothers Alex and Andrew. As our children grew up and went out into the world, the prospect of working lost a lot of its shine for us, and we conceived the notion of retiring early and moving to Victor Harbour. Our Melbourne friends were horrified, and the kids were troubled. But what would we do in Victor Harbour, they all asked. Determined to figure it out as we went along, a favourite strategy of ours, we retired to Victor in June 2017. Ian was a few weeks short of turning 56. And Ian devoted himself to being what he dubbed Captain Yes. He was determined to try things, give them a crack and figure out what worked for him, with no expectation that he would be good at anything, nor that everything would be a success. Poetry group? Sure. A new Rotary club? Why not? Bushwalking group? Sounds fun. Volunteer at Riding for the Disabled? Yes. Take up golf again after 30 years? Jackpot. While not everything he tried stuck, golf became a fixture in his life. He loved being outdoors, and he especially loved playing regularly with his brother Andrew at the Victor Harbour Golf Club. What could be better than 4 hours of whacking little white balls and shooting the breeze with his best friend? Thank you, Andrew, for saving me from having to learn to play golf. Nothing, however, could save me from having to listen to Ian talk about golf. Boy, did he talk about golf. It was a small price to pay, given the pleasure that he took from it. My favourite manifestation of the Captain Yes phenomenon was Ian's willingness to learn to dance with me. For the entirety of our lives together, I'd rather wanted to learn to dance, but Ian was highly resistant to the idea, on account of the 2 left feet I mentioned earlier. Captain Yes, however, was willing to give it a go, and thus began our journey with sequence ballroom dancing. The first year was tough. Neither of us was a natural, our learning styles were different, the physicality involved was way off-piste for both of us, and our progress was slow and no doubt excruciating to watch. But our new friends at the Victor Harbour Social Dancing Association were kind and cheerfully supported our efforts. Ian and I gradually acquired some skill and spent less time being terrified we'd accidentally knock over some of the other dancers, and more time enjoying the music, the movement, and being in each other's arms. We learned more than 60 dances over 4 years, and I fancy that we even learned to do 1 or 2 of them tolerably well. It was Captain Yes at his best. Ian loved being retired, and he loved living in Victor Harbour in the house his grandparents built. We gradually brought the 1960s cottage into the 21st century, but tried to keep the seaside holiday cottage vibe that made him feel like he was on holiday all the time, because of course he was. We renovated the front and backyards, and Ian finally had the lawns that he had wanted all his life. I'm not sure why he wanted the work of looking after lawns, but he did, and he was good at it. Just as I'm not sure why he chose me to be his life partner, but he devoted himself to that task too, and he was wonderful at it. He maintained that he fell in love with me because I was the first person he met that he found he could talk to about anything and everything, and he often said that one of the best things about meeting so young and marrying so quickly was that we grew up together. Ian knew me, he really saw me, and he accepted the whole package, flaws and all. Being seen by Ian made me real to myself. But connecting and communicating was one of Ian's talents, and people loved him for it. Ian never talked at people, and he rarely talked about himself. He could, however, talk endlessly about his children. He loved being their dad, and he cared deeply that they find life paths and life partners that made them happy. He couldn't have been happier to welcome first Gilbert's wife Ivy and then Heather's husband Dave into the family, and he was the same with his nephews and nieces too. The fun and laughter that we have had with our families over his too short life were a source of such joy to him. And I'm sure all his extended family, many of whom have joined us here today, know that he loved them all very much. Thank you to all of Ian's friends and family, past and present, with us today or watching the live stream or playback, for loving Ian. He felt that love over the 6 months of his illness, and it brought comfort to him to know that he was seen and that he had made a difference in this world. He couldn't believe how lucky he was that when he fell ill in late June, all of his children came to Victor to spend time with him. And then again in early December, they began to return from the four corners of the globe, and Ian was happy as long as he could just look at his lovely ones and listen to them laugh and joke and talk about all their plans for the future. He chose wine for them to drink, and he gave them the occasional lesson in history or politics, and he said to me often that they are his finest achievement. My dearest Ian, you will always be in my heart and the hearts of your darling children, and I know you will be remembered happily and for a very long time by all those whose lives you have touched. Thank you.
That was well done, Esther. You gave yourself a huge task, but I could see the beam on your children's faces as they smiled and encouraged you, and I know Ian would be very proud of what you've done also. Photos of Ian's life. Bringing his life together. I'm sure as you perused photos as a family and looked at all those memorable occasions, there would have been a flood of memories come back to all of you. So I think it would be just great for the moment, just to pause and capture a little bit of Ian's life in photos. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Heather. That was beautifully put together. Well done. Andrew, can I invite you forward now to share some of your memories of brother Ian? Thank you.
What a wonderful, joyous collection of photos that was. There were quite a few there. I noticed we were drinking wine or whiskey, and I know that one in Edinburgh, we'd had a good time there, drinking whiskey. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and family and friends of Ian and Esther. My name is Andrew Moffatt, and I'm Ian's brother. Together with my older brother Alex, who's here, we've both known Ian since he was born and only have fond and loving memories of him for the past 61 years and 5 months. Ian was my brother, best friend, golfing buddy, and confidant. Ian was born in July 1961, and one of my earliest memories is of him coming home from the hospital with our parents Jim and Pauline and of welcoming our new baby brother. I have to say that Alex and I have loved Ian from that minute when we met him and have never stopped loving him. We saw Ian learn to walk and talk and grow from a child into an amazing adult, and we've been close for our entire lives. Ian grew up in an average Adelaide suburban home at Henley Beach in the 60s and 70s. Those were the days when you played in the street with the local kids and gained pleasure from riding your bike or kicking a ball in the backyard. I remember well our parents sending us three brothers off to Sunday school with sixpence for the collection tray. I may get a bolt of lightning standing here saying this. Having the beach nearby at Henley and a whole sixpence to spend, needless to say, we really rarely made it to Sunday school, but would disappear to the beach after buying lollies, ice cream or chips with our collection money, arriving home covered in sand in our Sunday best, and tell our mother that we learned all about Jesus at Sunday school. You can see why I'm waiting for the bolt of lightning. Sorry, Pastor. Sorry. While none of us brothers were terribly religious, we were brought up to be good and kind to people, qualities which Ian carried throughout his life. Ian attended Henley Primary School, and I remember being told by our mother on his first day at his age 5 to look after your younger brother as we were shuffled out the front door, as you were in those days, and told walk that way. I did look after my younger brother, and my elder brother and I have never stopped caring throughout Ian's life. Ian suffered some significant medical issues with his right ear as a child and had a fairly major surgery to correct the situation. The result was that Ian had very limited hearing in his right ear. Ian never complained. He turned that to his advantage in later life, as he made sure that people he didn't want to listen to were on his right side. This could be very handy at dinner parties or in restaurants, but when playing golf with Ian, I always had to ensure I walked on his left so that we could converse easily, which we enjoyed tremendously. As children growing up, we often enjoyed holidays at Victor Harbour, either with our parents or our grandparents. Ian loved Victor, and it was a natural choice for he and Esther as a retirement location when he gave up the law and wanted to spend more quality time with his Esther. I have wonderful memories of us three brothers as children playing on the beaches around Victor, climbing the bluff countless times and generally having a great time. We even learnt how to play golf here as young teenagers, and Ian retained his love for the game, picking it up again when he retired and becoming a very competent golfer. Ian did well academically with his secondary schooling, as he was a diligent and capable student. After completing his schooling with good grades, Ian then did a law degree at Adelaide Uni. Ian made some good friends at school and at uni, and he maintained those friendships throughout his life, and he was still regularly in touch with those friends, even recently. I must mention the three brothers. Ian, Alex and I were very close brothers, always were. We regularly caught up for three brothers dinners over the years when business travels allowed, and once retired, we embarked on a series of short trips together to catch up, talk about family, and generally solve the problems of the world. Ian and I loved a road trip, as Esther mentioned, and never stopped talking the whole time we were together. Those catch-ups usually involved some fine wines and some games of golf, but we always had a ball. In 2018, we took it to the next level when we met in Paris in France, the three brothers plus Esther and Norma. And Ian and Esther knew Paris well, and they showed Norma, myself and Alex around, and we visited some beautiful places and some lovely restaurants. And then we did a World War I battlefield tour through northern France. And Ian's great-grandfather was killed in World War I and is buried in Villa Bretonneux. And on the 100th anniversary to the day, that picture that you saw of the three of us at headstones, that was his headstone, 100 years to the day when he was killed in the Battle of Le Hamel. We had a ball in France, and then we went on to Edinburgh and did some very serious whiskey tasting, and saw the Edinburgh tattoo, which was fabulous. The three brothers will live on and will always have a seat at the table for our beloved Ian. Ian reintroduced me to golf when I retired in 2018. I'm so thankful to him for his patience and gentle tutoring while I relearned the basics of the game, mainly here at Victor Harbour Golf Club. I hugely enjoyed our regular games but could never beat Ian, not that I ever wanted to. He improved over the years and always remained 10 strokes or more better than me. If you saw me play, you would understand why. We did have some fun though. We had names for all our shots. A wild hook of the golf ball out to the left was named after a famous Greens politician, and a slice out to the right was after a One Nation politician. While a low fast ball tearing down the middle of the fairway was called a Cathy Freeman, after that famous Australian gold medal runner. We did have some other names for various hits. We had a Prince Charles, but I won't tell you what that was. But some are too rude to mention here. I will miss our golf games, and especially the camaraderie and conversations about everything from family to politics. As Esther said, Ian's children were everything to him, and the first 9 holes of any game was dedicated to talking about them. Ian had a nice circle of friends and enjoyed their company immensely throughout his life. But he never really had any serious girlfriends. That is, until he met Esther in 1984. When he did meet Esther, well, that was it. All the stars aligned and they fell in love. Ian has only ever had eyes for Esther, and they were married in 1985 and been hopelessly in love ever since. Ian told me numerous times over the years that he only ever wanted to be with Esther, and she was the girl for him forever. He was just meant to be. When Ian was diagnosed with this horrible cancer in June, he told me that he'd let Esther down. That was his first feeling. They had so many plans together for the next 20 or so years, and he was so sorry they would not be fulfilled. They've travelled widely, and had so many plans for more trips into the future, often woven around visiting their children wherever in the world they happen to be. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge Esther. She has stood by Ian through thick and thin. But in the last 6 months, she has been extraordinary. She has nursed him, soothed him, and in those final days, she never left his side, never left the room, no matter what. I saw the love there between Ian and Esther, and it was stronger than ever. Esther's presence calmed him, and he knew that Esther would help and protect him, often from the medical profession. Hope there's no doctors here. Esther, from all of us, thank you so much for all you did and for loving our wonderful Ian. You have been amazing. Also to Alistair, Heather and Gilbert, your father loved you all so much, as I know you loved him. Ian got so much pleasure and pride in watching your continuous successes, and I know that he'll always be with you as you continue to make your marks on the world. Ian saw 2 of his children happily married. Gilbert married beautiful Ivy, and Heather married David. I think Ian's father of the bride's speech at Heather and David's wedding in November last year was a highlight for him. One of the photos with Ian with the microphone, that was him doing the father of the bride's speech. It was a highlight for the whole family, and he carried it off beautifully with his characteristic wit and eloquence, and you saw it there, that twinkle in his eye. Ian had that twinkle. Ian lived his life to the fullest, and the whole family and I are shattered. That his life has been cut short. We have lost such a special person. We had so many more golf games to play. I had so many more times to get beaten at golf. Travels to undertake, good wines to drink, political problems to solve, and we solved them all. And 3 brothers' adventures to have. Ian was a good man. He was loving, humble, honourable, honest, generous and kind. He was funny. He had a razor-sharp intellect. Despite considering himself just average, he had a razor-sharp intellect and a formidable memory, especially for history. He would run rings around me all the time. He wasn't impressed by the badge on a car or the size of a house, but by the character of the person. He was my brother. And together with all his family who are here, I could say that we'll love him forever and miss him terribly. Rest in peace, him.
Was well done. Thank you so much, Andrew. Memories are something we create every day, whether we realise it or not, and the impact we have on people on days like today is more far-reaching than any of us can really imagine. I know Mum and Uncle Andrew have messed you guys up. Why didn't you go first? But I'd like to invite Ian's children up now and share some of their tributes to their wonderful father. Thank you.
Why'd you do that to us, Andrew? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gil, and this is Heather and Alistair. We're Ian's children, and would like to thank everyone for being here today as we celebrate the life of our father. We're grateful that many of you have travelled to be here. When I remember my dad, I smell fillet steaks cooking on the barbecue. I see golf balls flying over the Victor Harbour Golf Club, and I hear Dad attempting to speak French with an earnest Australian accent. Most importantly, I remember how Dad made us feel. Dad always listened. He made people feel seen and special. Today we're proud to share some of our memories of him with you.
In the middle of year 12, I was fairly without direction in terms of what I wanted to do. Dad, being the passionate and involved father that he was, immediately leapt in to help. As part of this, Dad spent countless hours driving around Melbourne, going to open days and trying to help me make my mind up and help me figure out what it was I wanted to pursue as a career. This is no easy task. I hadn't given him much to go on, other than that I was sick of studying. I didn't want to work behind a desk. This eventually led me down the path of joining the Navy. While Dad was helping me prepare for interviews, and somewhat desperately keeping the words gap year out of the question, he introduced me to what his view on a leader was. And to him, a leader is someone who personifies 3 key traits, or the 3 C's of leadership: character, courage, and capability. Dad was certainly a capable man. He spent much of his distinguished career as a solicitor, moonlighting as a farmer, and I have fond memories up at the farm with Dad, as I'd help him fix the electric fences, herd the cattle, dig retaining walls and sort out the veggie patch, and care for his olive orchard. He'd often let us drive the tractor while we were sitting on his lap. He set an incredible example to all of us through his unquestionable character. When I was coming to visit him over the past months, I'd often sneak away from work early on a Thursday and have a mate cover for me on the Friday. And even when I was doing this, trying to get away to see Dad, he'd always be saying, oh, well, only if it's okay, only if it's allowed, make sure you're doing everything properly. He didn't care about me coming to see him, it was more about doing the right thing. Always wanted to do the right thing. He had incredible integrity. As you all know, this was a massive part of who he was. In his legal practice, in his relationships, and his everyday interactions. Dad would always ask himself, is this the right thing to do? And he would always do what was right, no matter how unappealing or how difficult that was. Dad was enormously courageous, as a loving father, a devoted husband, and an honest friend. Dad was never afraid to speak his mind to those who needed his guidance. And the purest display of courage was when he followed his heart and got engaged to our beautiful mum, after only knowing her for 6 months, over the phone. Ever the romantic, this was a leap of faith. And Dad truly lived every moment of his life with such calm and confident courage.
Dad's love for his children was unconditional. We arrived at that conclusion after some very extensive testing over the years. When teenage Heather declared herself a vegetarian, Dad still loved her. When Alistair reversed the family car through the gate, Dad still loved him. When I threw 8-year-old Alistair through a dry wall to beat him to the last Easter egg, he still loved me. And when the three of us together shattered a whole cupboard of crystalware looking for the snow cone machine, because it was hot and we wanted snow cones, he somehow still loved us. Even in such dire moments, Dad always responded with patience and gentleness. He put his love for his family first, and the lessons I've learned through the example he set are the most valuable I've ever been taught. My wife Ivy describes Dad as a gentle giant. To me, more than a gentle giant, he was a giant of gentleness. In remembering Dad, people have often called him gentle, as well as kind. But I think another word that needs to be in the mix is cheeky. Along with all the times he'd say, "Don't tell your mother," when he'd palm over a few beers before a party, or let us stay up late watching TV while Mum was out. A memory that stands out to me is the first time he met my wife Ivy, completely by chance, as their paths crossed in our driveway. As can be expected of him, he was a perfect gentleman and introduced himself with calm and poise. But Mum had not met Ivy yet. And until she did, some weeks thereafter, Dad was constantly rubbing it in. All the while giggling at her frustrated reactions.
We could always tell that for Dad, spending time with us was never a chore, but a joy. When we were toddlers, he would spend hours building block towers for us to knock over. And as we grew older, we became co-architects, and together we built complex train track cities, pillow fortresses, and sandcastles at the beach. We used to play with him in the pool every summer. He loved floating around in a floaty bed, probably trying to relax after a hard day's work, and we would swim underneath him, working as a team to flip him over. He'd always act so surprised. As a family, we'd drive over to Victor Harbour every summer for the Christmas holidays, and Dad would play endless games of I Spy in the car with us, challenge us with math problems, and listen to hours and hours of Harry Potter audiobooks. He'd point out geographic and historical landmarks, and give very detailed explanations of their significance in his usual encyclopedic fashion. Dad loved driving around Australia with Mum and would take any excuse to hit the road. When I lived in Canberra, he and Mum would drive the 12 hours to visit me and would always tell me about the new things they'd seen along the way. We would go out exploring around Canberra, trying new hikes and sampling all of the Canberra restaurants and wineries. Dad also loved travelling the world. When I lived in Barcelona, it was a given that Mum and Dad would come visit. We bar crawled our way around the city, and Dad was always game to try a new food or wine. We rented a car and did a road trip up the Costa Brava together, with Dad expertly navigating the drive out through the busy streets of Barcelona. We went hiking along the red cliff tops and discovered a tiny restaurant in a cove that you could only access by walking trail or boat, where they cooked fresh fish on open coals, and Dad thought it was the best thing ever. We swam in the Mediterranean Sea and had cheese platters and wine on the patio of our apartment and talked for hours. It was a lightning trip, but Dad was so keen to see where I lived and to share that experience with me. It didn't matter where we were, he just loved spending time with us. He had endless attention and curiosity about us kids and our lives, and we felt how much he loved us and how proud of us he was.
When I was playing in a premiership footy game in 2017 in Canberra, Dad flew up to watch. Afterwards, as we were all celebrating back at the club, Dad fit right in with the team and easily won over every person he engaged with. His charm, ability to have a friendly conversation with all of his friends, coaches and teammates, truly showed what a deft touch he had. And all the while, pretending to enjoy a VB as opposed to a South Australian Red, for my benefit. Dad's ability to talk to anyone about anything and have a genuine interest in what they were saying, in what they had to say, is something we've all observed over the years. As Gil said, he had an uncanny ability to make people feel truly heard and seen. Dad has never been particularly into AFL or basketball, never really watched much of it on TV or cared who won the final or the Brownlow. But when it came to us, to his family, there was no stopping his enthusiasm for our sports, hobbies, or interests. It would always be a key component of our phone calls every weekend. He would always ask, how was footy? How'd basketball go? How did you play? How were your teammates? How did they play? He never actually cared about the game results, but rather how his kids and their friends had played and whether they'd had fun. I'm sure that Gil and Heather have had nearly identical experiences with our cheering parents on the sidelines. When I was 9 or 10, every Saturday morning, Dad would go do the grocery shopping, and he would coerce me into joining him with the temptation of a sausage in bread from the butcher. I know why I went. I went because I got a sausage out of it. It was unreal. But in reflection, I was always wondering what he was getting out of this, because I was absolutely no help when it actually came to any of the shopping. If anything, I was a hindrance. But he would want me to join him anyway, purely because he enjoyed his children's company. It's just the kind of dad he was. And also, I think he was ensuring that he didn't have to deal with another attempted vegetarian in the family after Heather's previous transgressions.
We felt so lucky to have him as our dad. He stayed at home with us when we were young. He cooked for us, he cared for us, he played with us. As we grew older, he encouraged us to do the things that we were passionate about. He drove us to sports games and trainings, late night parties and early morning band practices. He encouraged us to play musical instruments, to take art classes, to travel, to study, and to pursue careers that interested us. When I was in prep, I was desperate to play netball and joined a team my friend was on called the Red Angels netball team. This team was in a league that played on Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. through the winter. Since we were the first game of the day at the netball courts, parents had to arrive before the game to bring out all the equipment, set up the goalposts and put up the padding. Mum remembers this fondly because she always got to stay home and sleep in. Dad took me every week. I remember how much he cheered me on, even though the quality of the games must have been atrocious. He'd always tell me how well I'd played and that it didn't matter if your team won or lost, as long as you tried your hardest, were a good sport, and had fun.
When I was 10, I tried my hand in the kitchen for the first time with an original recipe. Pasta flavoured with whole cloves. Dad was overjoyed. Delicious. One of the best things I've ever eaten, he said. He told me I should cook more and even consider becoming a chef. If I were playing with building blocks, he'd tell me I'd make an excellent architect. When we had bonfires at the farm and I was continually searching for larger and larger things to throw on and incinerate, he always tried his best to steer me towards a career in demolition or forest management, rather than arson.
Mum has already touched a bit on his philosophical leanings, but a family friend recently shared an excerpt that really resonated with us, and I'm sure would have resonated with Dad, from Richard Dawkins. We are all going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they are never going to be born. The potential number of people who could have been in my place but who never lived outnumber all the sand grains in Arabia. These unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats and scientists greater than Newton. We know this because the set of possible people allowed by our DNA massively exceeds the set of actual people in the world. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I, in our ordinariness, that are here. We privileged few, who won the lottery of birth against all odds, should be at peace with the prospect of our inevitable return to that prior state from which the vast majority have never stirred. Us kids just feel so lucky to have had such an amazing, honourable, gentle, smart, and fun man as our father. We'll always love him so much and treasure our memories of him.
Dad, in one of our final conversations, you told me to stay kind, strong, and honourable. If I am lucky enough to possess these traits, it's because I've learnt them from you. We all have. We're proud to have you as our father. We love you. We miss you. And we're eternally grateful for everything that you've given us. We'll carry you with us always.
Well done. It's good to see that encouragement coming one upon another and two upon another as you worked your way through that and did an incredible job. What a man, what a story, what an impact he has made. But I can encourage you all today that you've made an impact on Ian's life as well. I'm sure in many ways it was a two-way street. You carried him and he carried you. And that's what life is all about in this humanity that we live together. We bring this service to a close with many great memories of Ian, Esther, and his children, his brothers and their respective partners, the extended family and friendships that were created when these two came together and created something unique on planet Earth. Part of you is gone with Ian. But as I think one of the boys has already said, a lot of Ian will stay with you always. That's how life works. So again, on behalf of the family, I do want to thank you all for your love, your concern shown not just today, for days, the weeks and the months that have led us all here today to celebrate the life of Ian Moffatt. And I will thank you again, Esther and family, for allowing me to conduct this service on your behalf. Everybody, like these people plus, I was just going to say that actually, but you're so organised. If you didn't have an opportunity to sign the memories book, it would be a great opportunity, even if you're up at Whalers, having a few thoughts run through your head. It's amazing how photos and stories bring back other memories. Please don't be embarrassed to write in that book. I'm sure that the family would love in days to come to go through that and remember you and remember the stories that you've told about your life with Ian, with Esther and with the family. Again, as Esther's already reminded me, if you'd like to join family up at Whalers for some light supper and some refreshments, you are all more than welcome. And again, I thank you for today. Thank you.